I tell you my wrestling nightmare that in 1991 Barry Darsow doesn't pitch the Repo Man character to Vince McMahon. I don't want to live in that world. I'm sure you do have your own though, especially because so many pivotal moments in sports entertainment history have happened due to a fluke. We can't always be so lucky though, so I am Simon from What Culture. Please do hit that subscribe button. This is 10 wrestling nightmares that almost came true. Number 10, Becky Lynch almost retired. I mean, how ridiculous would that have been? Becky Lynch is so important to WWE in 2022, you can't even imagine the company without her. Let's not pretend this came as a huge surprise. When you go back through the past, you can see she was always ahead of the game. Just got it. This is why it's crazy she was almost done in 2006. After suffering a serious head injury, Becky felt like her time was done and stepped away for almost 7 years. She had a few cameos in between, but if you were a fan of Rebecca Knox, it felt like the end. Thankfully, that little bug deep inside took over and convinced her to give it one more go, and just look where we are today. If that's not raw talent, I don't know what is, especially because she made it to the very top and then smashed that ceiling too. Number 9, The Ultimate Warrior's Ultimate Challenge. The WrestleMania 6 main event, if you were a kid watching wrestling, was amazing. It was impossible to believe that Warrior and Hulk Hogan were going to fight each other, especially because both the World and Intercontinental titles were on the line. The most amazing part of this, however, is that it was reportedly Vince McMahon's second choice to close that show. Crazy, right? Convinced that good guy versus good guy was never going to be bought by the fans, McMahon also decided that Tiny Lister was going to become a huge star. Vince had assumed that the movie No Holds Barred, which he helped create, was going to be such a success that Zeus, as he was known, would be able to headline WrestleMania against the Hulkster. This is why we did the big tag at SummerSlam in 1989 before the truth became very obvious. Thank goodness. Number 8, The Ultimate Warrior was almost part of the Attitude Era. In 1997, after Bret Hart had gone to WCW and Vince McMahon was panicking a little bit, he reached out to the Warrior and offered him a $750,000 contract. This isn't hearsay either. The deal is out there for you all to see on the internet. Why on earth anybody thought this was a good idea, I don't know, as Vince and the Ultimate One fell out all the time, and this is why it would have been a nightmare. Not only would they have butted heads over and over, but Warrior had a very specific view of himself where he had to be treated as the guy and he had to be put at the top of the card. You assume with all that money on the table, the company would have acquiesced, meaning one Steve Austin may have found himself in the same situation he did in WCW. Held back due to the old guard. I mean, it's unreal to even discuss. There is proof of this too. Go and look at World Championship Wrestling in 1998. They did bring the Ultimate Warrior in, and well, it was the opposite of good. Not good. Number 7, WWE almost releases John Cena. The story of how his career exploded into life is well documented, as apparently Stephanie McMahon heard him freestyling on a tour bus, waved the magic wand, and made it his gimmick. From there, he climbed the ranks to become so important to the promotion that even if you hate John and could never get on with his work, you must have seen how bad this would have been. Cena was so integral through turbulent times, and he deserves credit for that. You could even go as far to say the transition to a PG product would not have been as smooth without the man that can't be seen, and yet he was on the chopping block according to some. And sure, that may just be fiction as it makes a good story, but he certainly did fall off after his debut against Kurt Angle. Thank goodness he woke up one day and decided to rap. Number 6, WWE wanted Batista versus Randy Orton for WrestleMania 30. Ever since Batista returned to the 2014 Royal Rumble, it was clear what WWE was going for. They thought this wink wink nudge nudge to Evolution would be a smash hit, and it would have been, if not for Daniel Bryan. We all know this story, but for the uninformed, Bryan had become a ridiculously popular character and wrestler, and yet because he wasn't in WWE's plans, they tried to push him to one side. That just made the whole thing worse, to the point if he hadn't have snuck into this match, I think there would have been riots. It's all some people wanted. This also ties into the fact that WrestleMania should always feel like the culmination of the previous year. Just go and watch anything Bryan did during this period. He could smile and thousands of people would erupt. He needed this moment, and thank goodness he got it. Number 4, Kevin Owens was almost in the League of Nations. The League of Nations should have been alright. It's not like Sheamus, Alberto Del Rio, Rusev and Wade Barrett were idiots. Far from it. They had all been main eventers to a certain degree, but had been so misbooked, they needed something to get them back on top, and this could have been it. And then WWE ruined this too, and it was stupid. Even Rusev has admitted they fell out with each other backstage due to how poorly all of this was booked, and according to PW Insider, Kevin Owens was penciled in to join. I am not kidding. This was happening in November 2015, and then Owens was forced off a show through illness and written out of the thing. Talk about dodging a bullet. Now, to be fair, Owens makes everything work, so he may have been the glue here, but if we jump forward to 2017 when WWE made him the face of America, which was a similar gimmick, that was a bit of a struggle, so you gotta figure this would have been too. Number 4, the worst flipping night ever. As you may know, I host a little show called Ups and Downs. And one day, WWE announced the Demon Finn Balor versus Sister Abigail for TLC 2017, and I was terrified. This was mostly because somebody had decided the best use of Abby was to have Bray Wyatt put some sort of veil over his face and pretend he was a different person. Now, you can pull something like this off, and I'm sure Wyatt had some plan, but in terms of what we saw, no, it was terrible. The whole thing saw Bray pour some sort of acid over Balor as well, which was ludicrous, and it hit rock bottom when on the 2nd of October Raw, Wyatt actually said, "I will strip back to my flesh to reveal the true nature of my dark song." What? The reason it's only a potential nightmare is because it didn't happen. It was almost as if the world took pity on this and decided to step in, because Wyatt got sick beforehand and the whole thing was cancelled. Now, health comes first, and I'd rather have sat through this than anyone be unwell, but you gotta figure this was a blessing in disguise. Number 3, AEW almost didn't exist. It is good that AEW exists. As Tony Khan was mulling over whether he should enter the business though, he had conversations with the likes of CM Punk in 2018, thinking he would need a megastar to get this off the ground. Punk wasn't interested as he had heard this story 1,000 times before, which was the first rebuff in this story. The other is almost more crucial because it would have ended things before they began. While Khan switched his attention to the Young Bucks, WWE also swooped in and offered Matt and Nick Jackson a bunch of money and a 3-month out clause. That's right. If they weren't happy after the first chunk of creative, they could all shake hands and be done. That's unheard of. There was also rumours they wanted Cody Rhodes back and made a play for Kenny Omega, so imagine if they had all agreed. AEW probably would have still got Chris Jericho, which would have been huge regardless, but would Tony have even pulled the trigger without the rest? I say it's doubtful. Number 2, Bryan Danielson almost didn't sign with AEW, which is why he wrote that article about how much he owed to WWE after he had jumped. The American Dragon mulled over this decision for ages. It's another reason why everybody loves him to the degree they do, because he's just a good guy and his rise to the top has rocked. He was also so important to WWE in 2021 because everything he did was brilliant, hence why he ended up in the WrestleMania main event. It's also why Vince McMahon made a play to keep him and was even willing to try and start a relationship with New Japan so Bryan could tick that box of working over there. That is crazy. As it turned out, Danielson felt like he would help the business much more by trying to establish AEW as a proper company, and here we are. Number 1, AEW thought about having a general manager. It's not really AEW's fault, but the idea of a GM pulling all the strings is just done. It's like anything in life. It's been happening for so long, you just want something different. Every company considers it because they remember Austin versus McMahon and want to try and replicate that. And when AEW was struggling a little bit creatively towards the end of 2019, there were some reports that the concept of an on-screen authority figure were being discussed. Thankfully, a lot of people were like, no way, and those voices won out, and the change instead was Tony Khan telling everyone he was now in charge 100%, and all stories now have to go through him. This was the correct move. And it still could happen, of course. I mean, Tony does exist within the story side of things, even as a floating idea of a boss. But hopefully, if it does, it won't be till 2030 at the earliest. I think that's how long you would need before you could recycle it again with any kind of success. We've just seen it way too much.